Hi, friends. I'm Heather Miller, CEO and founder of social impact startup Grasshopper, talent acquisition and DEI specialist, mom of 2 humans and 3 fur babies, most under 4, former professional ballet and hip hop dancer, yoga teacher, interior designer, caregiver, provider, retirement planner, innovator, social connector, and the list goes on. As you can tell from my bio, I've always taken drive to the extreme, and for the most part, done pretty well juggling all of my hats. However, I say this on behalf of most of us, the past 3 years have been very challenging. My personal experience included moving to an unknown city, the unexpected death of my mother, and the birth of my first child 2 weeks later, launching a startup during maternity leave, the pandemic, building diversity strategies for a global corporation in the wake of George Floyd's death, another baby, and then, the icing on the cake, a layoff. I felt like I was approaching a midlife crisis with no space to do so. As a result, I've been thinking about balance and whether that's actually a thing. Join me as I speak with some amazing thought leaders and women in my life to understand how they keep the fire going and the lights on while staying sane. We'll explore drive, juggling priorities, taking no prisoners with your schedule, love and sickness, pursuing your dreams, enjoying the journey, and figuring out what is right for you. We hope these conversations help you err on the side of midlife epiphany versus midlife crisis. Welcome to Balancesness. Ieva, welcome to Balancesness. How are you?
Hi, Heather. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really good. Thank you.
Of course, good. It's morning my time. It is afternoon in your world. Where are you? You're in the UK?
So I'm currently based in Lithuania, which is the northern part of Europe. Yeah, but I spent many, many years in the UK. But at the moment, I'm dialing from Vilnius, Lithuania.
Oh, cool. So when I was reading, your research and digging into your educational history, I was assuming that you were still in the UK, but you and I met virtually the last time as well through the sidebar community. So
Yeah,
you could be anywhere in the world and you can
absolutely.
have a connection to them. So I think you're our first Lithuanian podcast guest.
Woohoo!
Yeah, for sure. I love we're hitting the globe one country at the time.
Shout
Well,
out to all the Lithuanians in the world.
yes, exactly. We'll have to like put out a message and draw them all to balancedness. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to talk to you. We haven't talked about creativity really on the podcast as it relates to balance, so I'm really excited for that. I come from a very big creative background. I was a professional dancer. Um, Always the things that make me flow are like making things with my hands, so art, jewelry, whatever it is, which is very different from what I do in my professional life. But always seeking ways to bring creativity into my professional life. So I'm so excited to hear from an expert how we do it. And I'm sure our audience will be excited as well. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So let's start with you. And if you could introduce yourself to the community. And since we're talking about balance, I would love to hear about all parts of you.
I'm wearing many hats. I haven't done many things that you mentioned, I danced in my school life, but I'm not a professional dancer. But my personal and professional mission really overlaps, and I want to demystify creativity, and I want to make creativity accessible to everybody. So I do that with my research. So I'm a workplace creativity researcher, and I try to communicate scientific findings to everybody and make them accessible to everyone. And I also run workshops for businesses on creative problem solving. And throughout the years, I developed my own method that is called DIP, that hopefully I can tell you about later today.
Yes, I'm so excited to hear about it. And when we initially touched on it, when you and I met a couple of months ago, I was so inspired. I just think there's so many different avenues to employ your work, and I know you're working on bringing it to the rest of the world. As you said, I love making creativity accessible, because sometimes we feel like there's like this huge unlock that needs to happen. And by reading your method, it doesn't necessarily seem like there's like so much work that needs to go into it and a huge unlock. Like it's very simple. There are small little things that you can do. And bring it into your life. So I'm excited to hear more about that. But what do you think about balance? I mean, do you think about balance?
So just a sidetrack for those who are interested in zodiac signs and horoscopes. I am a Libra, you know.
So. Okay. So
what
does that mean?
I am thinking about balance every single day. It's all about balance.
Okay. I know nothing about horoscopes. I know time, so that's very helpful. So you're thinking about balance every day. Okay.
Yeah, so balance is became, I think it's like everyday practice to me, which means I probably don't have a balance on daily basis. I actually learned this from my coach, Mary Williams, who's based in Cambridge, UK. And she actually trained me to calibrate, to think about balance as a something that happens daily and that we can calibrate on a daily basis, depending on what we need on the particular day. So I think I have been trying to do that since then. And you know, one day could be a lot about just my professional things and my work, and very little sort of other life happening. And you know, when I realized that my work took over, I might take a Friday off and just hang out with my friends and just, you know, engage in some fun activities, go swimming or something. So no work would be happening on that day. So I like to think about and what are we balancing? What are we trying? What is on one side of the scales and on the other side of the scales? So for everyone, it might be different things. For me personally, is because, you know, doing creative and meaningful work, which I am very fortunate at the moment that I have this opportunity to do something that is meaningful to me. But the dark side is that work many times overtakes everything else. So, and I want to have something else, not only work in my life. So I'm also a mother of 2 boys, and I want to be spending time with them. I also have different hobbies. I am also a partner, a daughter, a sister, hopefully still a friend to someone. So I want to have this, I want to have more things than just work in my life, right? So this is about, so when I discover that work started taking over and I don't have a moment to talk to my friend who's maybe, I don't know, to my friend in India or in Italy or in Vilnius or in Cambridge, I don't have a moment to reconnect with people that I care about. I think this is for me a signal that something is not going wrong. Something is going on the way that I want it to be going. But also, you know, like I thought that balance is sometimes a discipline. I don't know what you think about this. Balance is a discipline in a way that I sometimes need to discipline myself to pause, right? To have half an hour for a healthy lunch, or if I run out of my brain power, take a moment to have a nap, or take a moment to sign up for a creative hobby, right? So it's like disciplining myself, yeah, and not to let work overtake it, because
Yeah,
yeah.
I think I'm wondering when you were talking about calibration, I wanted to hear fully what you meant by that, but it almost seems like you're taking your, let's say, experience and averaging it out over the week. So if something's like, you know, if work is front loaded at the back end of the week, you're assessing what else you need for this discipline and you know, supplementing, as you said, with the day off or some time with your friends or the kids, whatever you need. But I like thinking about it as a discipline, maybe because that's my natural tendency to really as a dancer, it was all about discipline, and then as an academic, it was all about discipline. So that's almost like drive and discipline are my default. So originally when you were talking about work taking over, I was empathizing with you because it does for me as well. Like we're passionate about it. But then having that default to discipline can be helpful in being mindful about what else you need to have more of a well-rounded life. So certainly, like people talk about balance in terms of the scales. They talk about it in terms of a dance, like an ebb and flow. But I like this idea of discipline because it does take work to be able to make sure that we have enough of the different parts of our life that fill our cup. So I like thinking about it in that respect.
And one more thing I also, thought about is that sometimes balance is also about allowing ourselves to be in disbalance.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Not over worrying that. So I was delivering. I was teaching in a university here in Vilnius in April and March, April, May, and it was an evening teaching, right? And so from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I am away. I'm not with my family. It's 2 evenings in a row, right? So it's quite intense. And yeah, so I am aware of that, and I'm okay with that. In that moment, for those days, I am okay with maybe not being full with my let's say with my family and not spending more time on other things. But I know that the weekend is coming, and yeah, I will
I
take
think
the
that
back.
also reminds me of the concept of seasons. And a lot of people talk about like this season of my life. And so when I get too heady about, say, being away from the children, or even one thing that I remind myself over and over again is like, this too shall pass. Like this season of my children having meltdowns. I mean, they're toddlers, right? I have to remind myself that this season will pass. And so with you, if there's 2 nights that take you away from home and it's quite intense, it's sort of, it's a season that will pass and then things will calibrate later.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it might be a week's frame, but for someone else it could be 2 weeks. And sometimes it's 2 weeks, or sometimes maybe it's a month, or sometimes maybe you can have it all in one day. So yeah, I think we can if we allow more flexibility, it's also less stressful, because you don't want to be stressful about balance, right?
Right.
You don't want to stress about
Like the antithesis of balance, being stressed about the balance, for sure. I would love if you could tell us a little bit about DIP and the genesis of it. It seems to me like it was born out of a desire for balance. So I'm curious about your method.
Oh, thank you. Of course, it's a great pleasure, to share my creation. I call this dip method as my third baby.
Yeah.
But I want to take you back about 15 years ago. And when I was on my doctorate journey, I was pursuing PhD. And it's like, imagine this, like Ieva 15 years ago, moved to the UK from Lithuania, and she has worked, she had a corporate job for a few years, and suddenly I am in this university environment, you know, and it felt very bohemian, right? It's like doing research for some reason for me felt really like very, like, I felt like I was an artist. I could, you know, I needed to come up to see the scientific opportunity, to spot the problem that no one has yet solved. And it's social science, organizational behavior, discipline. And I was focusing on creativity. And I had an amazing 4 years, right? So this international community, I'm in Birmingham, UK, you know, 100% autonomy. No one is telling me when to start my job, when to finish. It's like, I felt really like an artist. I think many researchers or academics think about research as a creative process, but I felt I was doing something really creative and meaningful, and I was hooked up. And I had this idea flow. I was on the peak of my creativity, and I didn't have kids at that time. I was on a scholarship. It was sort of like a gap from my corporate career. So I was working in consultancy and training before I re-entered academia. So, you know, it was all sort of it was a lot of work, but it was very enjoying and meaningful process. And I met many people. And then, so when I got my first academic job, I had to move from Midlands in the UK to East Anglia, and I got a job in University of East Anglia. And as someone new to town, someone new to university, someone who just finished her PhD, right? A 4-year-long project to which I dedicated all my efforts, right? I found myself in this zone, in this stage of my life where I realized that I have to, I mean, I don't have 4 years for another PhD. My job now is sort of to produce one PhD in 1 year, or ideally maybe 2 PhDs in 1 year, meaning that I have to come up with new research projects. I have to find collaborators, and I have to not only come up with those new ideas, they have to be original if I want to publish them in high-tier outlets. But this was really overwhelming. It's like, I have to think about teaching, I have to think about new research projects. My office is at the end of the corridor and I don't know anyone. And I'm quite extroverted, and you know, I can make new connections very easily. And it was still quite challenging for me. Everybody seemed to know what they're doing. Everybody seemed to be in their collaborative teams. And I felt like, really, like, what do I do now? I mean, I didn't have any ideas. I was like stuck. I was really stressed, overwhelmed, and I was like, I felt like the least creative person in the world. So I think this was the moment when I started thinking for the first time that creativity is something that is not a stable state. It's something that it's something that is more dynamic. And there is very little research on creativity being more as a state of mind rather than, you know, so normally we think about it as okay, it's a personality trait, it's a process, it's an outcome. And at least organizational behavior type of research mostly focuses on creativity as something that is more stable rather than changing over time. Only recently, within the last few years, we've seen studies that have started looking into creativity as a state. Anyway, so long story short, this was a signal to me that something is going on. Why, when I was doing my PhD, right, and master's before, I was on the peak of my creativity, and suddenly now I don't have any ideas. And then I also, I had a partner at the time, and he also moved with me in this new place. I got pregnant with my first son. So it sounds like a side note, but getting pregnant meant that I also had to stop cycling to the office, right? And instead, I started walking. So we lived about 15 minutes walk from campus, which meant that I started having these long morning walks to my office. And I think this is when I look back, I think this is when my first breakthrough happened. Is that during those long walks, I realized that I am walking to my office. It was a very nice walk, by the way. Like the University of East Anglia is based in Norwich, which is it's a small historian town, but it's also very green. So it's like a very refreshing morning walks. And I started noticing that my brain is in this amazing state of mind, and that I keep getting those insights, over and over again. And I almost was hooked up I really enjoyed taking those walks in the morning. I was hooked up because I knew that if I take this walk in the morning, by the time I get to the office, I would already have generated, a few aha moments, right? So this was another breakthrough. This was a breakthrough for me to realize that, oh my God, I am walking, but actually I am also working, right? And it was, so this got me really curious to explore what was going on. And I think this is how it all started, And then I started sort of enhancing the awareness of what is happening in my brain and my head when I swim, when I do yoga. So I was also, I had a quite active leisure time even before pregnancy, and while I was pregnant, it was, but so it gave me a lot of different mediums to explore, right? Like yoga, swimming, and then I would go to the gallery and I would see, oh, again, my brain is engaging in this creative process. What's going on? So this is how I then decided to dive into research and actually dig. I was asking a question: what work and non-work activities can boost our creativity? And really started exploring creativity as a state of mind, or as a state that is dynamic, that is changing. And but my own experience, and I'm 100% sure that you had the same experience, or something similar, that the best aha moments happen when we are doing something which does not look like work.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily happening at your desk. It's
Yeah.
like happening everywhere else than your desk.
So on the same page as you, and I've told this story several times on the podcast, so apologies for redundancy, but you and I have never talked about this, but I'm such a movement-based person. I don't know if that's a term, a label, but movement.
Now it's a term.
Now it's a term. Movement always unlocks something for me. So dancing, it always did that. It was like where I was most clear and in flow. And actually, several years ago, when I was launching Grasshopper, my professional development platform for women, I was really stuck. I couldn't figure out, like, the general idea was there. And I purposely put myself into yoga teacher training because I knew that I needed this, like, really intensive period to just work it out, both physically and mentally. And actually, it was on my walks to the yoga teacher training that really unlocked the solution for me. So I'm so on the same page. What I'm curious about is when you say a state of mind, creativity as a state of mind, can you clarify what that means as opposed to anything else? I immediately think of, are there optimal states that you need to be in to unlock the creativity? What do you mean by a state of mind?
Mhm. Yeah, so there is very little research. We know still very little about it, but I can give you a few hypotheses. So think about, I like to use this metaphor, like think about a treadmill, right? When we are on a treadmill and there is a goal and we keep working, we keep doing workout, but it's basically impossible to think about anything else because we are reaching a certain goal. It's a very sort of linear process. And then so it's not necessary. We can make it a maybe treadmill is not the best example, but think about a really like a workout that is intense, okay, that is not a relaxed workout. So workout where you need to concentrate and there is no space for your mind to wander. Okay, this is not a creative state. Creative state when you can be doing the same workout but at a very comfortable speed, pace, right? And there is or maybe you are walking in nature at a very comfortable pace and you have space for your mind to wander, to listen, to use all the senses. So you observe what is happening, you notice, you hear, you smell, right? There is, so a creative state of mind is when you have headspace, right? This is one way of thinking about it. When you have a headspace to, yeah, it can be here now, but it can be also related to mind wandering, and when you have some space to mind wander. So I think first is a creative state is the state where you are relaxed, okay, versus you are stressed and overwhelmed. Now, second, creative state is when you are experiencing positive emotions. Now we also what we know from research that why, for instance, why dancing can enhance creativity, why maybe 20 minutes of dancing can bring you in this creative state of mind, because dancing can elevate your positive emotions, and it can also help you to switch from a negative mode to a positive mode. And there is a study that has shown that actually this switch is really powerful for creativity. So if you manage to switch between negative to positive, it has been shown to be predicting creative outputs. But positive emotions themselves is a big thing for creativity, because when we are in a positive state, the brain works in this way that there is more space for new connections to happen. New connections that normally we would not necessarily accept. So we would just reject them. Our inner critic would reject them. But when we are in a positive state, our brain are more flexible. So it's a cognitive flexibility, which is also the term that somebody might know.
Sorry.
So yeah, go for it.
No, sorry to interrupt. I was just thinking the idea of the brain rejecting new inputs because either like we don't have time, it's the brain being efficient. Like my husband all the time will say, oh, like I forgot this detail about your life or the kids' birthdays because, there's only so much space in there. So, the new information is not welcome. That's so fascinating. But keep going. I interrupted.
Yeah, so like, for instance, the example would be like, imagine if you're rushing to catch a flight but you are really hungry and you pop into a cafe, and instead of like buying something that you really like, you just grab a random thing. This is your overwhelmed and stressed mind deciding, and then you end up on a plane looking at what you bought and you're saying, what is this sandwich? You know, I don't even want it. Right? So it's not a creative being. Creative being, when you have enough space to make a decision, what is the best idea for you at that moment? Right?
It makes so much sense. Was there another piece of this optimal state, or may I ask you one more follow-up question?
Yeah, go for it. Maybe it will come later.
Okay.
There are many potential mechanisms. So, okay, so for instance, one, it could be also there's something that it's called a discovery experience that can happen engaging in a creative leisure. So, like for instance, if you've done a lot of creative you explored a lot of creative mediums, right? So your work creativity, so someone who is doing, let's say, a creative hobby in the evening, right? If I can connect this creative hobby with some work challenge, so doing a creative hobby gives me some discovery experiences, right? That maybe I, for instance, let me give you an example. So recently I did an improvisation course, right? And during the course, I really learned a lot about my creative process, which is not work related. So I always considered myself as being quite good in spontaneity and improvisation at work. But when I started doing improv course, it turns out that I can't improvise, right? So for me, it was a big eye opener. I can't. I mean, I was like very disappointing as well. I can't improvise, but at work I can improvise. And it really, for me, it was a discovery experience, and it totally opened a new perspective to me that yes, I am creative in my professional, in my research, in the way I run workshops, in the way I give talks, in the way I do thought leadership, right? This is my creative space. But it's not necessary that I expect to be at the same level of creativity in any discipline. And I knew that in theory. I knew that because creativity and knowledge is very connected. You have to have you as a dancer, right? As a dancer, you need to learn the basics to improvise later. But for me, I never really experienced that. So yeah, so something to think about is also, so it's being in a relaxed state, being in a positive state, and being in a discovery state. Okay, these might be the mechanisms that are conducive to our creativity.
That's really interesting that it's also there's a connection with the knowledge, because I think if I try to make sense out of this, the knowledge is it's the fundamentals. So if I can bring it back to dance, as you said, the knowledge for me is in the routine. So, you know, if you're practicing for a particular ballet, say it's the Nutcracker or Coppelia, whatever, once you've learned the routine, once you know what the actual dance is, that's when you can get deeper into your practice. And there was something that you said earlier about the relaxed state, the lack of stress. So once you're not stressing about knowing or having that routine memorized, it's there, it's fundamental to your body, the rest can open up. So like you said, you can improvise, you can get deeper into your character, you can start to connect with the other people on stage, with your audience. There's so much more potential.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, you learn the basics, you get the knowledge required, and then you leave it. You get into relaxed state of. You practice how to get into relaxed state of mind, and then improv happens.
That's really, really useful for anyone in the workplace or not. I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit about the statement, "You can't have it all." And I think you believe the opposite, that you can have it all. And so that it's possible to have it all. And I am curious about that because, little fun fact, I have a little tattoo on my finger called OC in French also, that I got years ago, maybe 10 years ago, in a state where I was like, yes, I can have it all. And it was like very affirming to me and empowering to have this thing to look at every day. And as I get older, especially now as I have children and I need to compartmentalize my work, and then the time after work for the children and for other things that might put me in a creative state or my exercise, I'm starting to realize that I can't have it all. And I would love for you to disprove that. So I would love to hear how you believe it's possible to have it all.
Yeah, it's dynamic. This belief is dynamic, like balance. And it's really very personal, and I think whether you believe you can have it all or you can't have it all, and what is all at the end, all are very valid, and who says that we have to have it all? So whatever works for anybody. Yes, I'm not trying to sell any message here or to convince anybody that we need to have it all. I think for me personally is it's a little bit like what we spoke before, is like shifting the mindset that work and personal life is not necessarily separate. So it was the first realization that my leisure time is perfectly feeding my work. So for someone who's very high achiever, for high achievers, this might help, right? That designing your leisure time or going or seeking leisure time to be better at work, right? For some other people, this is not an issue. They perfectly have their all leisure time, right? But for someone like me, and maybe I am assuming maybe you, sometimes we have to trick our brain, right? To say, okay, and it can be very extreme. So some people might think I'm crazy, but sometimes I do go and play Lego with my kids because this is the way I can relax, okay? And this is the only way I can detach and not to think about work, because like especially recently I noticed that it sometimes I don't have a problem with leisure time, which I am using to work as well, but it's a challenge to disconnect. And so just to not to overwhelm with information, but first I think it's a mindset shift that leisure and work is not separate, right? But one, if you do good at work, you have more time for leisure. If you have good quality leisure, you are more productive at work. And by leisure, I mean everything, kids, your hobbies, and other responsibilities. And so I sometimes I joke that if I didn't have kids, I probably would be like workaholic and I just keep working all the time. So I'm very grateful to them that I have these opportunities to do nothing on the carpet. But yeah, so this is, yeah, just shifting the mindset opens, shifting the mindset to this opens a new perspective, right? So yeah, I mean, I am having this 1 hour lunch with someone, right? Because either I can get inspiration, or I can have rest, or I can maybe get some feedback on the work I do, or I can simply, I don't know, reconnect with my friend. And if I feel reconnected, then I have a better quality at work and in my life. But I think what else? I think it's also a lot about accepting something, what I call, it's not my term, but it's also a creative method, which is polarity thinking. Or someone else in academia, we have this, in research, we have a concept of paradox mindset. So I think this is what I'm also practicing. It's not very easy, but almost like accepting dualities in your life and accepting that I'm thinking about the example, saying more often yes and rather than yes but. So thinking that, oh, if I take this interesting project, this I have to sacrifice my family life. But what about how this interesting project, and I'm taking this interesting project, and what can it bring, I don't know, to my kids? Like for instance, I'm traveling to the so there is a creative problem solving institute that is based in Buffalo, New York State. There is a conference in June, and for me to travel all the way from Europe to US, of course, so I'm going to the conference. It's for my professional development. I'm also giving a workshop there, but I need to take, the conference is 4 days, but I will be probably taking longer time, right? So that means I'm not at home for 10 days, maybe in total. So it could be yes, but I'm not with my family, or yes, and I will come with so much, you know, good. I will come inspired. I will come with new learnings, and I can share them with my kids. And maybe next time I can also bring them with me when they are a bit older.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have a definite answer. But these are maybe some things to think about.
For sure. I listened to this fascinating podcast last year, so I'm losing the details of exactly who it was, but it was a female CEO. I think she was a VP of something at Facebook and then moved to a creative platform like Figma or Canva. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she was talking about work-life integration and the way in which she's integrated her children into her work life because of exactly what you said, this yes and attitude. Like, yes, I need to have a work dinner, and I'll bring my children along, or I'll host it at my house, because how amazing would it be to have my children exposed to these brilliant minds and thought leaders at a really early stage? Like, what are they gaining from this experience as well? That was really mind-opening for me, because as I said, I tend to think about compartmentalizing, like, this is the time for the children, let me give them exactly what they need, which often is devoid of what I need. And I find that if I can find ways to bring in inspiration, perhaps it's us beating together and something that's inspiring to me, I'll be more useful to them. I will be a better mother and teacher to them. But you touched on something that I'm very curious about in your work, which is the idea of the dualities or the polarity thinking, and that in your method, there are so many, what was striking to me as like yin and yang concepts. So like the mundane can be creative, and the routine and the anti-routine, and working while not working. So I'm curious about how these these polarities exist in real life?
So let me unpack a little bit what I mean by what the DRIP method is about. So we already, talked about how it all started, but essentially what happened is, after I digged into research and discovered so I ended up reviewing more than 1,500 academic papers and 30 years of research focusing on just simple daily activities, right, that have been found to be associated with higher creativity for ordinary people, right? For ordinary, not, some studies looked at maybe some, Nobel Prize winners, but majority of studies were either done in laboratory experiments or with working population. So I ended up with this pile of research, and some studies would say, oh, listen to music. And then some studies said, do dancing. And then we have this amazing study on walking and creativity. And then there was mind wandering and creativity, and then cycling and creativity. So, different ideas, or like doing something, living abroad, right? And I was like lost. I'm sitting with this pile of research, and but how do I make sense of it? Like, when do I do what? Like, do I always listen to music? Like, but wait, what music? Should I go for a walk now, or should I maybe just stand up and continue working, standing up? So I was trying to make sense of it, and what I ended up with also following some theoretical frameworks, and I ended up with synthesis of 8 essentials, of 8 creativity essentials. So all the studies, it's only the tip of the iceberg, right? So for you, it might be dancing and yoga and, I don't know, going to engaging in some other creative leisure. For someone else might be something else. But I think the core is understanding that there are 8 essential nutrients, and everybody can quickly run a diagnostic test on those essential nutrients, and then it will be very clear what your creative capacity is at this moment, right? So we will come to the dualities, but those 8 essential nutrients are, how much are you rested? So everyone who's listening, you can just, draw a quick circle in your notebook and divide into 8 parts. And one part of the circle would be rest. Another one is energy. Then we have professional support, connection, focus, direction, inspiration, and growth, right? And you think about to what extent each of the areas are satisfied at the moment, right? So how much are you rested on a scale of 0 to 10? How much do you feel energized, physical energy, 0 to 10? How much professional support do you have in your work? So then you do a quick diagnostics, right? And what I see for many people, yes, very well connected, very high professional support. They are focused, they see direction, they are learning new things, high energy, no inspiration. So how long will you continue like this if everything is maximum, but you are not inspired? To what extent you can't come up with something super original and creative if there is no inspiration, right? So you will produce, of course, you will produce some creative outputs. I'm not talking that you can't produce, you can be creative, that you will be 0, but it's not optimal, right? So this is a signal. If you lack inspiration, then okay, what are these strategies? So in my method, I am then teaching people different strategies, but it's about experimenting. So, okay, if you need inspiration and you have 5 minutes, right? What about listening to upbeat music, right? And if you are not working, if you can take minutes break, listen to something which has inspiring lyrics, right? If you don't even have 5 minutes, listen to upbeat instrumental music. Okay? Do you have more time? Can you change your physical space? Can you go and walk for half a day in a library that has high ceiling, right? Lots of light. So these are inspiration practices, like, yeah, just a couple of examples. But the duality comes understanding the creative process, that creative process is not only about inspiration. So inspiration, you need a lot of inspiration when you are exploring. You need new learnings when you are exploring. Right? So if you need to explore, it's about learning, inspiration, and diverse perspective from as many people as possible. Right? So you are exploring. And then you can also reflect, okay, how diverse is my network? Right? So am I in my social bubble all the time? And this is also detrimental for creativity. So you might get inspiration from music, from engaging in creative hobbies, changing the physical space, but surrounded all the time by the same people might not give you a different perspective, right? So the exploration, and then the other part of duality is when you explored, you have to synthesize. And this synthesis requires a completely different strategies. So for synthesis, we need a lot of rest, relaxation, lots of physical activities at your comfortable pace. Meditation, on the other hand, it's like lots of solo, mind wandering, meditation, journaling, everything that is grounding, solo, relaxed, right? So for me, creative processes, the duality comes that some people are really good in exploring new ideas, collecting different pieces of the puzzle, and they struggle to synthesize. They struggle to converge. They struggle to make a decision, to combine information in the new ways. And for these type of people, I suggest, meditations, for instance, is really helpful. We use meditation for other things, for mental health, but for creative process, meditation is also very helpful. Walking can be also used after you explore idea for some time and you go for a walk to synthesize. So I hope that I can go on, but maybe you have
that was so useful. And I do want to be mindful of our time here. There's so much more that I want to learn, but thank you for all of this. This has been so incredibly fascinating. We're going to have you on for part 2 to dig in more. I have more questions, and I'm sure our community does too.
Yeah, let's do part 2. Looking forward to it. And thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for supporting another episode of Grasshopper's Balancesness podcast. If you liked it, please rate, review, and subscribe on our Apple and Spotify pages. Send me a screenshot at hello@grasshopper.com. That's GRASSHOPPHER to enter yourself into this episode's surprise raffle. And be the first to hear about upcoming episodes and events by signing up for Grasshopper's newsletter, which can be found on our website. Happy balancing until the next time.